Welcome to your deep dive into Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to explore this with you because, from what I understand, you're looking for better ways to understand your own emotions.
That's right. Atlas of the Heart is a fantastic resource for that. It's all about giving us a new vocabulary for emotions, a deeper understanding of how they work, and strategies to navigate them more skillfully.
So it's less about telling us what to feel, as more about giving us the tools to figure out what we are feeling.
Exactly. Brown maps out 87 distinct emotions and experiences categorized into 13 thematic places and uses the metaphor of a map to help us understand where we are emotionally. It's a powerful way to think about our inner world.
Okay, I love a good metaphor.
Yeah.
So thinking about these places, where do we go when things feel uncertain or overwhelming? Because I know that's something I struggle with a lot.
That's a common experience, and it's definitely something Brown addresses. She distinguishes between stress and overwhelm, which many people use interchangeably. She says stress is like juggling too many tasks. You're overloaded, but you're still managing. Overwhelm is like those juggling balls are on fire and you've completely lost control.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well. It's like hitting a wall.
Yeah.
So how do we escape overwhelm? Is it even possible?
Brown suggests the best way to deal with overwhelm is counterintuitive. Step away, do something playful, take a break, or even just do absolutely nothing. Let yourself recover and reset.
So sometimes the most productive thing you can do is nothing. Fascinating. But sometimes even when I step back and try to relax, I get stuck in a spiral of comparing myself to others.
Does Brown talk about that?
She does, and she highlights how sneaky comparison can be. We often do it unconsciously, which can subtly sabotage our behavior and relationships.
So it's like a hidden program running in the background, influencing our actions without us even realizing it. Precisely. And this can lead to all sorts of messy feelings. Brown spends quite a bit of time unpacking resentment, for instance. She says that we often mistake it for anger, but it's actually rooted in envy. It arises when we wish we could do or have what someone else has.
It's like a bitter cocktail of wanting what someone else has combined with the frustration of not having it yourself.
That's a great way to put it. It's not just being angry at someone, it's holding a grudge because you yearn for something they possess.
So moving on from the bitterness of resentment, where do we go when things don't go as planned?
That's a place we all visit from time to time. This is where emotions like boredom, disappointment, regret, discouragement, resignation, and frustration hang out.
Wow, that's a real downer of a neighborhood. It sounds like the emotional equivalent of a Monday morning after a weekend that flew by way too fast.
But just like life has its ups and downs, so too does our emotional landscape. While we might encounter setbacks and experience these difficult emotions, we also have those incredible moments that leave us feeling completely awestruck.
You're talking about those times when we experience awe, wonder, and curiosity.
Exactly. Think about the last time you were completely blown away by something. Maybe you witnessed a breathtaking natural phenomenon, or listened to a piece of music that moved you to tears. Those are the experiences that reside in the places we go when something is simply beyond us.
It's like being transported to another realm where the ordinary rules of life are suspended and anything feels possible. But let's be real, not everything is sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes things just feel off. Does Brown have a place for that?
She does. There are places we go when things aren't what they seem. Think about emotions like amusement, bittersweetness, nostalgia, cognitive dissonance. Even things like irony and sarcasm.
Oh, so this is where we find ourselves when our expectations clash with reality, or when we're wrestling with conflicting emotion.
Exactly. For example, think about the feeling of bittersweetness. You might experience this when you're moving out of your childhood home. There's excitement for the future, but also sadness at leaving behind a place filled with memories.
That's such a relatable example. It's like trying to solve a puzzle where some of the pieces don't quite fit.
Exactly. It can leave you feeling a bit disoriented, like you're trying to find your footing in unfamiliar territory.
Speaking of unfamiliar territory, let's talk about the places we go when we're hurting. This has to be one of the toughest areas to navigate right.
It is. This is where we encounter some of the most difficult emotions humans experience: anguish, hopelessness, despair, sadness, and grief.
Those are the emotions that can feel unbearable at times, the ones that can make you want to shut down completely.
They are incredibly difficult, but they're also a testament to our capacity for deep feeling and connection. Each represents a different response to loss, a different way of processing emotional trauma.
So even though these emotions are incredibly painful, they're still a part of the human experience, and it's important not to shy away from them.
Absolutely. Suppressing these emotions only makes them stronger. Brown emphasizes the importance of allowing ourselves to feel them fully, to process them, and to seek support when needed.
So moving from navigating pain to navigating relationships, what about the places we go with others? I'm guessing this is where empathy comes in.
It is, but Brown digs even deeper than that. She challenges our assumptions about seemingly positive emotions like sympathy and pity. She points out they can actually be enemies of true empathy.
That's interesting. I always thought sympathy was a good thing. How could it be an enemy of empathy?
Brown says sympathy often involves feeling sorry for someone from a distance. It creates a sense of separation. Pity, on the other hand, implies a sense of superiority, seeing the other person as somehow lesser because of their suffering.
So true empathy requires us to connect with someone's experience without judgment or a sense of hierarchy.
Exactly. It's about meeting someone where they're acknowledging their pain and validating their experience without trying to fix it or diminish it.
This is really making me think about how I approach my relationships. Now, another area where relationships get tricky is when we make mistakes. What about those places we go when we fall short?
That's a place where a lot of us struggle. It's home to emotions like shame, self-compassion, perfectionism, guilt, humiliation, and embarrassment. And Brown has some really insightful things to say about perfectionism in particular.
I've heard she's pretty tough on perfectionism. What's her take?
She argues that perfectionism isn't about striving for excellence, it's about fear. It's driven by a desire to shield ourselves from shame, judgment, and blame.
So it's less about achieving something great and more about avoiding negative feelings.
Exactly. It's about desperately trying to prove our worth. Brown contrasts this with what she calls healthy striving, which is about focusing on growth and progress.
So healthy striving embraces the messy, imperfect process of learning and growing, right?
Right. It allows for mistakes and failures, recognizing them as valuable opportunities for learning and growth.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of tough emotional territory. Let's talk about those places we go when we search for connection. I'm guessing this is where belonging comes in.
It does. And this place also holds emotions like fitting in disconnection, insecurity, and vulnerability.
Now, I'm curious about the distinction Brown makes between belonging and fitting in. I think those terms often get used interchangeably, but I'm guessing she sees them as quite distinct.
You're right. Brown is very clear that true belonging doesn't require us to change who we are or conform to external expectations. It's about embracing our authentic selves and finding those spaces where we can be fully seen and accepted for who we are.
So it's less about trying to squeeze ourselves into a mold and more about finding a space where we can truly be ourselves, quirks and all.
Exactly. It's about finding our tribe, the people who appreciate us for who we are, imperfections and all.
That's so powerful. It's about embracing the messy, beautiful complexity of being human and finding those people who love us for it.
Speaking of love, let's move on to places we go when the heart is open. What comes to mind when you think about this place?
Well, obviously love's a big one, but I'm guessing it's about more than just romantic love, right?
You're absolutely right. This place encompasses a wide range of emotions, from the soaring heights of love and trust to the crushing depths of heartbreak and lovelessness. And Brown gets into some really interesting stuff about the role of self-trust in this realm.
I'm all ears. Tell me more about that.
Well, Brown argues that self-trust is actually the foundation for trusting others. We can't truly open our hearts to others if we don't trust ourselves first.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to fill your own cup with self-love and self-trust before you can share that with others.
Exactly. And that involves embracing our vulnerabilities, being honest with ourselves, and setting healthy boundaries. It's about recognizing our own worth and deservingness of love and connection.
This is really resonating with me. It's like a whole new perspective on building healthy relationships.
It is, and it's a reminder that true connection requires us to be willing to show up as our authentic selves, imperfections and all. Welcome back to your deep dive into the Atlas of the Heart. We've covered so much ground already, but there's still so much to uncover.
I'm ready for more. Last time we left off talking about the importance of humility. I've been thinking about that a lot, especially in the context of my work relationships. It feels like everyone is trying to prove they have all the answers.
That's so relatable. But as Brown points out, true leadership and innovation come from a place of humility. It's about being open to new ideas, acknowledging that we don't know everything, and being willing to learn from others.
It's about embracing the don't know mind, which can be really tough in a culture that values certainty and expertise. So speaking of nuances, you mentioned earlier that Brown distinguishes between emotions that we often use interchangeably. I'd love to hear more about that.
Absolutely. For instance, she makes the distinction between joy and happiness, which are often treated as synonyms. Brown describes joy as a deeper, more enduring emotion than happiness. Happiness tends to be fleeting, tied to external circumstances or achievements, while joy is an internal state of contentment and gratitude that isn't dependent on outside factors.
So it's like happiness is winning the lottery, while joy is appreciating the everyday moments like a sunny morning or a good cup of coffee.
That's a great way to think about it. And Brown suggests that cultivating joy requires us to focus on things that truly matter to us, to connect with our values, and to practice gratitude for the good things in our lives.
It's about finding those sources of joy that sustain us even when things get tough. Because, let's face it, life isn't always sunshine and roses.
Exactly. And speaking of finding what sustains us, Brown also makes a fascinating distinction between curiosity and interest.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I'm always trying to be more curious, but honestly, sometimes I just feel plain nosy. How does Brown define these two concepts?
She describes curiosity as a more active and engaged form of inquiry than interest. Think of it this way. Interest is like noticing a shiny object. Curiosity is picking it up, turning it over in your hands, examining it from all angles, and wanting to know everything about it.
So curiosity is that spark that ignites a thirst for knowledge, while interest is more passive?
Precisely. And Brown believes curiosity is essential for growth, creativity, and connection. It's about asking questions, challenging assumptions, and embracing a beginner's mind.
And when you're genuinely curious about others, you're more likely to connect with them on a deeper level.
Mhm.
So switching gears a bit, let's talk about some of the more challenging emotions like anger and contempt. From what I understand, Brown has done extensive research on these, and she doesn't sugarcoat things.
She doesn't. In fact, she highlights how destructive these emotions can be both to ourselves and to others. She points out that anger is often a secondary emotion, masking other underlying feelings like hurt, sadness, or fear.
So anger is like a protective shield, a way of avoiding more vulnerable emotions.
Exactly. It's a signal that something is wrong, but we need to dig deeper to understand the root cause. While anger can sometimes be a powerful motivator for positive change, it can also be incredibly destructive if it's not expressed in healthy ways.
And what about contempt? How does Brown differentiate that from anger?
She sees contempt as far more toxic. It's a feeling of disgust or disdain for another person. It's a way of dehumanizing someone, often accompanied by a sense of moral superiority.
So contempt is like looking down on someone, seeing them as somehow less than human. While anger might be a flash of lightning, contempt is like a slow-burning fire that can destroy relationships.
That's a great analogy. Contempt creates a deep chasm between people. It erodes trust, fosters resentment, and can ultimately lead to the complete breakdown of a relationship.
Okay, so we've talked about anger and contempt. Now I'd love to hear more about shame and guilt. I know these are two emotions I've struggled with a lot in my life, and they can be really tough to untangle.
Brown has dedicated a significant portion of her research to understanding shame, and she describes it as one of the most painful and debilitating emotions we can experience.
Why is shame so powerful? What makes it so different from guilt?
Shame is that feeling of being fundamentally flawed or unworthy of love and belonging. It's that inner voice that says, you're not good enough, you're a failure. Guilt, on the other hand, focuses on behavior. It says you did a bad thing.
So shame is about who we are, while guilt is about what we do. Shame makes us want to hide to disappear, while guilt motivates us to make amends.
Exactly. And Brown emphasizes that shame thrives in secrecy and silence. The more we try to hide it, the more power it has over us.
So how do we overcome shame? Is it even possible?
Brown believes the antidote to shame is vulnerability. It's about finding the courage to share our struggles with safe and trusted people who respond with empathy and compassion.
It's about letting go of the need to be perfect and allowing ourselves to be seen for who we really are, flaws and all.
Exactly. And remember, guilt can actually be a healthy emotion. It helps us take responsibility for our actions and motivates us to make things right.
It's a reminder that we all make mistakes, and that's okay. What matters is how we learn and grow from them.
Now let's shift gears and talk about some of the more positive emotions that Brown explores in the Atlas of the Heart.
I'm all for that. I'm especially interested in learning more about gratitude. I've been trying to practice gratitude more in my daily life, but I'd love to hear Brown's take on it.
Gratitude is one of Brown's favorite topics, and for good reason. It's been shown to have incredible benefits for our mental, emotional, and even physical well-being.
Why is gratitude so powerful? What makes it such a game changer?
Brown describes gratitude as a practice of acknowledging the good things in our lives, both big and small. It's about shifting our focus from what we lack to what we have, from what's wrong to what's right.
It's about training our minds to notice and appreciate the blessings that surround us each day, even in the midst of challenges.
Exactly. And gratitude isn't about denying or ignoring the difficult things in life. It's about choosing to focus on the good as well.
So it's about finding that balance, holding both the joy and the sorrow, the light and the darkness.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that life is a tapestry woven with threads of both suffering and beauty, and that even in the darkest of times, there are always glimmers of light to be found.
This is really making me rethink how I approach gratitude. It's not just about saying thank you for the good things in my life. It's about actively cultivating a sense of appreciation for all of it, the good and the bad.
You've got it. It's a practice, a conscious choice we make every day to cultivate a more joyful and fulfilling life. And the amazing thing is the more we practice gratitude, the more we find to be grateful for.
It's like a muscle that gets stronger with use.
Exactly. And as that muscle strengthens our capacity for joy, resilience and connection expands as well.
This has been another eye-opening exploration of the Atlas of the Heart. I'm ready for the final part of my deep dive. What can I expect? Welcome back to the final part of your deep dive into Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart.
Hmm?
I have to say, this exploration has been so insightful. It's like I'm finally learning how to read the map of my own inner world.
That's fantastic to hear, and it's exactly what Brown hopes to achieve with this book. She wants to empower us to become more fluent in the language of emotions.
And not just to understand our own emotions, but to understand the emotions of others, right?
Absolutely. Because when we can recognize and name our own emotions, we can better understand and empathize with the emotions of others. It's like learning a new language that allows us to connect with people on a deeper level.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Atlas of the Heart, what are some of the most important takeaways? What do you hope I'll remember long after we finish this conversation?
Well, first and foremost, Brown reminds us that emotions are not good or bad. They're simply data signals that tell us something about ourselves and our experiences. Instead of judging or suppressing our emotions, we need to learn to listen to them.
So instead of saying, I shouldn't feel this way, we should be asking, what is this emotion trying to tell me? What can I learn from this?
Exactly. Our emotions are valuable sources of information, but we need to approach them with curiosity and compassion.
Another thing that really resonated with me was Brown's emphasis on vulnerability. She's so clear that vulnerability is not weakness, but rather the key to courage, connection, and authenticity.
That's a powerful message, especially in a culture that often encourages us to hide our imperfections.
It's like we're taught to wear these masks to protect ourselves, but in reality, those masks prevent us from experiencing true connection.
Exactly. Brown believes that vulnerability is the birthplace of love, joy, and creativity. It's about having the courage to show up as our authentic selves, even when it feels scary.
It's about taking off the mask and saying, this is me, flaws and all, take it or leave it.
And you know what? The people who truly love and appreciate you will embrace those flaws. They'll see your vulnerability as a sign of strength, not weakness.
And finally, I want to touch on gratitude again. It's such a simple practice, but Brown really drives home the point that it can be transformative.
She does. Gratitude is one of the most powerful antidotes to negativity, stress, and anxiety. It's about actively choosing to focus on the good, even in the midst of challenging circumstances.
It's like training our brains to look for the good instead of getting stuck in a cycle of negativity.
Exactly. And the more we practice gratitude, the more we find to be grateful for. It becomes a positive feedback loop that can have a profound impact on our lives.
So, as we conclude our deep dive into the Atlas of the Heart, what is one thing you hope I will take away from this experience?
I hope you'll remember that you are the cartographer of your own heart. You have the power to explore it, to understand its complexities, and to navigate its terrain with more awareness and skill.
I love that image. We're not just passive passengers on this emotional journey. We have the power to choose our destination.
Exactly. And if you ever feel lost or uncertain, remember that Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart is a valuable resource, a guidebook to help you navigate the vast landscape of human emotions.
This deep dive has given me so much to think about, and I'm excited to continue exploring the Atlas of the Heart. I encourage everyone listening to check out this incredible book. It's truly a gift for anyone who wants to live a more connected, authentic, and meaningful life. Thanks for joining us on this journey.